what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. Obviously, the press conference was today. We're going to talk about that. We've got some new physique updates. We've got the classic physique weigh-ins. But let's start out with a big one here. The first look at Brandon Curry. Now, these were recent pictures posted by his sponsor, Gorilla Wear. And granted, he's still wearing a tank top here, so you can only really see his arms, but you kind of see him in a most muscular here. And I think the question now on everybody's minds, now that we know for sure he's doing it, he did the check-ins, he's at the show, he's ready to compete. But there's a little bit of mystery behind how is Brandon going to do here, because so much of the conversation has been around these new up-and-coming guys, the top three from last year. And we haven't really seen anything from Brandon. He's really kept it under wraps. He looks good in these pictures, but again, you can't really tell much. It's just really his arms that you're looking at here. And I made this point in my last video, but I think it's a good point that we can't count out Brandon because of the fact that, A, he hasn't been outside of the top 6 in like 6 years. So it's really hard to ignore that. And then B, I compared it to the Dexter Jackson thing, even though obviously there's only one Dexter Jackson. Not everybody's going to be able to do what Dexter Jackson was able to do. In fact, probably very few people will. But a lot of people count Brandon out because it feels like he's been around for a while. He's an older guy. He's 41, and he won the title over 5 years ago now. But I think if you compare that to Dexter, people counted out Dexter for a while after he won the Olympia in 2008. And then in 2015... at 46 or 45, Dexter was runner-up at the Olympia again to Phil Heath, arguably one of the best to ever do it. So that was 7 years after he won his Olympia title. And then in 2016, he was still third. He was 46, 8 years after he won his first Olympia title. So we're 5 years after Brandon's first win. People are counting him out. But I think it's worth pointing out that it's not impossible for Brandon to be right back in the conversation. And you also have to consider the fact that last year, where Brandon still managed to place top 4, he was in the hospital the day before the Olympia, got out of the hospital, came and competed, and still got 4th. So I wonder if we've all made a mistake not even including Brandon in some predictions, or potentially not including him in the top 3. If he was 4th at the Olympia last year right out of a hospital bed, what's stopping him from being 4th or better this year? So, as a result of that, Brandon might be the open guy that I'm most excited to see compete, because we really don't know what he looks like other than these pictures, and we really don't know how he's going to place. And for the most part, really, he's been out of the conversation for most of the year just because he's been so quiet. And then also the fact that he's not working with Abdullah for this prep. What kind of package will he bring? Now, next up in the news, we also had some physique updates from Shaun Clarida. Again, not revealing his entire physique, but you can see his arms. He's hitting a side tricep. Another guy that we haven't seen a whole lot from during this Olympia buildup. But Shaun is one of the most exciting parts of the 212 division because he's got an uphill battle ahead of him to gain his title back and dethrone the new 212 champion, Keon Pearson, who looks incredible this year. So Shaun really needs to bring his all-time best to beat Keon at his all-time best, because I think Keon already looks better than he did last year, and Shaun was a little off last year, so this year he needs to not do that. But from what we can see here, which is very little, he does look like he's got that trademark peeled to the bone Shaun Clarida conditioning. In this battle in 212 between Keon and Shaun, I've said several times now, is one of the things that I'm most excited to see this weekend. I think it's going to be a really hard-fought battle. And similar to Brandon Curry, like I said, we haven't really seen what Shaun is looking like for this prep. So it's going to be one of those physiques that's, when it's unveiled, that's going to be one of the exciting parts of the Olympia weekend. So Shaun and Brandon both are guys that I really am very curious to see how they look on stage. Now, next up in the news, there has been a new picture circulating of Rafael Brandao. And this was a screenshot from one of his videos on YouTube where you can see his glutes and hamstrings, which is something that he's had some issues with. When it comes to conditioning, that's usually where his conditioning kind of fails him. And a lot of people are talking about now, well, in this picture, he's got very soft, watery looking glutes. His hamstrings actually look okay to me, but the glutes, he looks like he's holding water here. And in yesterday's video, I kind of talked about how in the most muscular pose, as big and full and crazy as Rafael looks in that pose, you can't really see those deep fibers in his chest, those deep striations like a Hadi Chupin would have in that same pose. So now a lot of people are wondering, even though Rafael looks a lot bigger and looks improved, he keeps showing the same pose over and over again, his really strong poses. But when you see a picture like this, you really wonder, what's his conditioning going to look like on stage? We've seen a lot of updates from a lot of athletes that are competing this weekend. And almost all of them that we've seen throughout the course of this week and even last week and the week before, they've already got striated glutes. They've already got deeply separated hamstrings. And again, his hamstrings look okay. It's the glute that we're focusing on here. So the question is Rafael behind because he did pursue adding so much size for the Olympia? And I saw a really good comparison that shows just how much size Rafael did add, because I think that is the focal point of a lot of his updates, is he looks a lot bigger than the last time we saw him. So on the left, where he's wearing the green posing trunks, that was from the week of this year's Arnold, Ohio, 2024. And on the right is a picture from this week, this year's Olympia, 2024 Olympia. I mean, this is a very clear, very obvious, much bigger, much fuller, more muscle version of Rafael. Like, very obviously bigger. But is he going to be sacrificing some conditioning to come in bigger? And to be fair, even when he won this year's Arnold Classic South America, he was criticized for his glutes, his lower back, his hamstrings. That seemed to be something he struggled with even when he wasn't this big. But you got to think about the fact, at the Arnold, he was up there standing at that size with Samson Dauda and Hadi Chupin. He placed third. Even though he didn't beat those guys, he was in the callouts with them. He was standing with them, and he didn't look bad. Then you look at the update next to it, the new and improved Brandao, which to me looks like a completely different Rafael. Will he be so much bigger with his aesthetic frame that even without the best conditioning on that stage, he's still going to be in the top 6, top 10? I think he'll definitely be top 10. I'm not worried about this picture of his glutes to the extent that I think he's going to be totally out of the conversation. I think he's still got a shot at top 6. Now, is he going to beat guys like Hadi and Derek, especially when from the back he's looking like this days out? No. Even Samson's glutes were tighter than this at the Tsunami Pro that he did. So I'm looking at this like, does this hurt Rafael if his glutes look like this, if this is any indication of how his glutes are going to look on stage? I think yes. I think he's still probably going to be top 10. I think this hurts his chances of top 6. And I think this kind of eliminates his chances of being a top 3 guy. Because when you're talking about that real upper echelon of guys, top 3, top 4, that's where the striated glutes start to matter a bit more, especially up against a guy like Derek, a guy like Hadi. This is not going to cut it for Rafael against those guys, but against some of these other guys it might, because again, we know conditioning's not everything. There's also size, shape, symmetry, proportion, and Rafael has a lot of those things that are working to his advantage. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Does this update eliminate Rafael from the conversation of earning himself a top spot? Or do you think he's still got a chance because there's still a little bit of time for him to tighten up? But I think we've seen even classic guys who don't show their glutes as much. Most of the updates that we've seen from the classic guys had way more striated glutes than this. All right, guys, today's video is brought to you by the Arnold Sports Festival. Go to their website, arnoldsports.com. Buy some merch, buy some tickets for next year, watch the replay of last year's live stream for free, and look forward to and anticipate another live stream in 2025.
I was born a bodybuilder and I will die a bodybuilder. This is the #1 bodybuilding show in the world. It was really spectacular. We're gonna go up to $500,000 for the winner next year.
Now, next up in the news, let's get into some of the events of today, starting with the Classic Physique weigh-ins, the weigh-ins and the check-in. So, Chris Bumstead checked in. His height was 6'1.5", and his weight on the scale was 241.5. And I'm assuming he's going to weigh a lot more than that on stage. Which, again, kind of goes back to that open bodybuilding discussion and that freak factor discussion of how much more size Chris is able to have than some of these other guys, the shorter guys in Classic. I mean, obviously, Chris is taller, so that kind of disproportionately affects the body weight. 6'1" is probably taller than the majority of open bodybuilders that even exist. But I bet there's more than 10 open bodybuilders competing in the Olympia this year that weigh less than Chris Bumstead here. And again, the height disproportionately affects it, but 241 is a big dude. Maybe not 10 open guys. Let's say like half a dozen will be less than that, because Chris will probably carb up more, and I feel like he'll be more like 245, 250 on stage. And maybe, maybe not 10 open bodybuilders, maybe like half a dozen. Like if you, Derek, Martin, Hottie, the shorter guys, Bonac, maybe even Brandon, Theo LaGuerrier is a smaller guy. I mean, this is an impressive weight for a Classic guy. And the point in me saying all that is, again, just that freak factor, and I think the advantage that Chris has that makes him partially what makes him so dominant. And you also had Ramon being the only guy in the Classic Physique weigh-in, or at least the only guy that I saw actually take his shirt off and his pants off and start posing for the crowd. So Ramon, very confident in how he looks. I don't think you get that clear of a shot of him hitting the poses except for like the front double bicep. Wesley also weighed in. He didn't really strip down, hit any poses. I don't think they said his weight out loud. And then Urs Kalasinski was probably the most covered up because he was wearing like a full racing jacket, a Bud Light racing jacket. He had probably the best outfit of anybody at that Classic Physique prejudging, and he has his new hairstyle too. So Urs definitely stood out. And then you kind of look at that room, the size of that room, and the number of Classic guys that are there at the athletes meeting compared to what we saw in open bodybuilding. Again, there are 60-something Classic Physique competitors in this year's Classic Olympia, and that room is just full. And it's full of athletes. Those are all competitors that you're looking at sitting there, which again is pretty damn impressive and really speaks to the popularity of that division. But I think it also kind of speaks to we're going to have a very lengthy show to watch this weekend. And I like the way they split it up because I think Classic might have more competitors than any other division except maybe bikini or wellness or something like that. But the way they split up the show, you've got 7 divisions on Friday and then 4 on Saturday. So Saturday morning prejudging, there's only going to be 4 classes, one of them being Classic Physique. And I'm guessing they split it up that way to have more reasonable timed prejudgings. And Classic being one of the bigger divisions, that's why they're only putting it with 3 other prejudgings that day. So I'm curious to see how long this thing runs because, on the other hand, I feel bad again for the men's open bodybuilders because men's open prejudging is still going to be at the very end of Friday night. And so, like I just said, you've got 7 divisions going on Friday. So you can assume that Friday will probably be the longest of the streams just based on that. And last year we had this conversation about how a lot of the guys looked off in open bodybuilding. And the justification for that was, well, they went on like the middle of the night, like 1 a.m, and they were waiting around backstage for like 6 hours. And I don't remember exactly how they split it up last year, but I don't think they had 7 divisions on Friday. They may have, but 7 in one night seems like a lot. But that's the way they've got it split up this year. So I do still kind of feel bad for Men's Open having their prejudging that late. Because, again, it's Vegas time, so I'm expecting this thing to wrap Eastern time, maybe like 2 in the morning. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Now, getting into the press conference a little bit here. So, the press conference started out with them unveiling the new Sandow trophy for this year. If you guys forgot, this year is the 60th anniversary of the Olympia. So they unveiled the 60th anniversary Sandow, which is going to be plated, which is plated in 24 karat gold, similar to the 50th, the last 24 karat gold sculpture of the Sandow was given to Phil Heath. So they're doing it again. So it's, I guess, the exact same as it was for the 50th. And then it also has all the names of the past champions etched into the bottom of the statue. So that was interesting to see. I'm interested to see what else they do for the 60th anniversary as far as special little things. The press conference was different again this year. They brought out all the women and then all the men from all the divisions. Well, not all of them, not all the women from all the women's divisions, but like representatives of each division all at once on stage sitting in like stools. I preferred, of all the different press conference formats, I really preferred that auditorium style where everybody's on stage. The seats are kind of staggered like bleachers, so you can see everybody at once. And the way they were sitting at tables, how they had it before, I feel like made it look a little bit more like a legit press conference. Like everybody kind of cluttered on stage, sitting on stools. Not my favorite, but just my preference. All right, so let's get into the actual press conference here. The majority of the press conference, to be honest, wasn't super exciting. The most exciting part of this entire thing by far was Samson Dauda stripping down and posing at the press conference. Basically, he was asked the question, I believe it was by Fuad, and the question was, what makes you deserving of winning the Olympia this year? Why do you deserve to win? And then Samson got up, took his shirt off, started posing, and he said what I believe is the best line of this whole press conference is, anybody who thinks they deserve it more than me, or anybody who thinks I don't deserve it, come up here and pose with me up front. And of course, nobody else did. Samson was the only one that posed, which, to his credit, very impressive. So hats off to Samson for making this thing really exciting, because like I said, it was really long. There wasn't a whole lot of combative moments. I think the setup on stage, you didn't really see any of the guys go back and forth with each other like you see at the other press conferences, the way that the stage is set up where everybody's sitting at tables and spaced out a little bit better. These guys are all kind of jammed on stage in these stools, and I feel like that's kind of why they were so close to each other. You didn't really see a whole lot of confrontation. Nobody was really arguing. Nobody was really combative. Samson was the only one that really stood up and stole the show there. So again, hats off to Samson. He looked good. I think obviously what we want to see from Samson is conditioning, and I think seeing his lower body, his glutes, his hamstrings, his quads would be the best indicator of that. It was kind of hard to tell from this posing how conditioned he was. Obviously, he looked really big, but honestly, I didn't think he looked super ripped in the upper body, to be completely honest. But again, he's not. This isn't the day of the show, so take it with a grain of salt. He's still got a couple days to dry out and stuff, but yeah, he looked big and he was impressive. Classic Physique. We'll start with that since we just talked about the Classic Physique weigh-ins. Kind of the same stuff as last year. Chris Bumstead saying everybody else is battling for second. He doesn't feel that anybody on the stage is a threat. He also said that when all these guys are saying they're going to beat him or they're going to place higher or whatever, he says he looks in their eyes and he doesn't see that they believe it, so he doesn't believe it either. Ramon, probably the most confident that I've seen him at this press conference, speaking English and answering English questions on his own without a translator, so I thought that was pretty impressive. So hats off to Ramon for that, but he said this is his year. He's taking the title home, and then Chris kind of responded with, I don't believe that you believe that. But overall, it was very respectful. And then Bob did ask Chris point blank if he was going to be retiring after the Olympia this year if he wins. And Chris kind of gave a politically correct answer, but he didn't say no. He said, every year somebody asks me is this going to be your last one? And he says, one more. So when Bob asked him that point blank, the fact that he didn't say no, to me, I think further fuels that possibility that this could be Chris's last Olympia. But he basically answered with, I just kind of take it year by year. And he said he knows he has some more in him if and when he wants to continue competing, which is kind of what I speculated in a previous video, that, you know, he's so young, he's 29. If he wanted to take some time off to focus on his family, he could take, 6 years off if he wanted to and still only be 35 and come back. So if he ever got the itch to come back and compete, he is young enough to do that. So a retirement from Chris this year might not mean we're never going to see Chris again. But again, I think the fact that Chris didn't outright say no, he's not retiring, is, I think that's pretty telling. Now, as far as the open bodybuilding goes, Derek obviously spent a lot of the time talking. He's the reigning defending champion. It was kind of the same thing, very politically correct answers, kind of like it's me versus me type of thing. I'm not thinking about the competition. I'm going to let my physique speak for itself. The work that I put in this year will speak for itself. He said he was focusing on creating more distance in his strong points as well as trying to bring up his weaker points. So he said in the back shots, he wants to create more distance between him and everybody else. So he's been working on improving his back. But overall, not anything super combative or exciting there. I thought most notably there was a lot of emphasis with open bodybuilding on Andrew Jacked. Dennis James asked a question where he was saying that he heard from someone close to Andrew's camp that this is the best Andrew we've ever seen. Andrew kind of responds with a short and sweet, there's going to be a lot of he's going to break a lot of hearts this weekend. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak is what he said. So Andrew seemed very confident. Dennis James kind of gave us that little nugget of information that this is the best Andrew ever and that he's going to win from whoever he heard that from. And then also somebody asked a question to Brandon Curry specifically about last year's Olympia when Brandon was in the hospital bed. And I felt like this question was kind of geared towards Nick Walker dropping out. And the question was, why did you choose to still compete even after being in the hospital? I'm sure you saw yourself after the hospital and said, I'm not going to be my best on stage. It's not going to be my best look. I'm probably not going to win. So why did you still compete? And Brandon talks about how he believes, life is about experiences. He would have regretted it. He would have been disappointed if he dropped out. And he just wanted to try his best, have that experience on stage and not look back with regret. And he says that even though he showed up, obviously not at 100%, it was still a win in his book because he showed up and placed. And again, I kind of felt like that was geared towards the Nick Walker dropping out, even though they didn't specifically mention Nick Walker by name. And they also asked Hadi Chupin, basically why he walked off stage at last year's Olympia. He took his medal off and walked off. And what his translator translated was that he just wasn't feeling well. He thought it was all good. He took his picture. He just wanted to get off stage, and he didn't mean any disrespect. So he kind of clarified that. And as far as Keon and Shaun Clarida go, Keon said he's at 100%. He's going to be better than last year. And Shaun Clarida said he weighed 175 pounds before this press conference, which is several pounds lighter than the first two Olympias that he won, what he weighed when he won those first two Olympias. And he said that his mistake last year was trying to come in a little bit heavier, and that's why he sacrificed some conditioning. He wants to bring that crazy conditioning back this year, and that's why he's so light. So I'm sure we can expect to see a really crazy conditioned package from Shaun Clarida, and I think a really interesting battle in 212. So that's kind of generally how the press conference went. Like I said, outside of Samson, who I think really stole the show here, there wasn't a whole lot of excitement at this press conference. It was kind of the general politically correct answers. I'm going to be better. I'm going to win. I'm trying to beat myself from last year, that type of thing. But props to Samson for really stealing the show and being the only person that got out there and posed. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments below about the prejudging. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already, because there's going to be more stuff coming later tonight, and then, of course, the Olympia weekend starting tomorrow. But thank you guys for watching, and as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. Alright guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel, and consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.